Hello, welcome to this on-demand event today where we introduce different subjects at different universities, and today is the turn of business analytics. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Dr. Jack Foston, joining us from Bayes Business School, which is part of City St George's University of London. So with these events, we tell you more about what to expect on the course, why you might be interested in studying them, give you some application tips and also a guide to careers as well. So let's get things going. Firstly, Jack, do you mind just telling us why might students consider studying business analytics at university?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're moving into a world where pretty much any industry you can think of is becoming really driven by data, AI, and automation. So I think businesses increasingly needing people who not only work with data, but actually know how to use data to make better decisions. So I think business analytics sits in quite an exciting space, kind of between those like quantitative kind of tech heavy subjects, but also with business problem solving at its heart. So I think students kind of who enjoy maybe those mathematical tech kind of coding type subjects, but also enjoy like spotting patterns or looking at data might really enjoy this subject. And I think it's important also to emphasize it's not just about like programming, but it's also about using sort of programming and sort of quantitative skills to actually understand businesses, to make changes and sort of improve things in society. And I think also one of the exciting things maybe is like the breadth of applications you can imagine for this. So pretty much every sector out there is using data. So it's not just, finance and business, but also sports, healthcare. Those are really like rapidly growing kind of analytics hotspots. So I think this is quite an exciting program and students can, get their hands on lots of interesting techniques, but also apply it quite widely.
Thank you, Jack. And I can speak firsthand. Like I run a business in analytics. I'm not doing training, but I work day in, day out in terms of analytics. So I can see the huge demand there'll be for people that have the expertise to really specialize.
That's it. I think even some kind of sectors you wouldn't even think about, like even in law and things like that, now rapidly becoming more sort of data driven, and with advances in AI, it's just becoming really applicable everywhere. So I think it's quite a nice time to be joining this kind of degree program.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, and AI is only going to get bigger and bigger, worrying stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about like what can students expect. So say you've got a student that's interested in business analytics. They're watching this video. They've heard the first answer in terms of why they might want to consider it. But in terms of the what can they expect on the program? I know, of course, you can talk about your program more so than any others. But do you mind just giving us a snapshot of what they can expect?
Yeah, sure. So I think because this is quite a new space, I think what students should probably be prepared to do a bit of homework on is that there's quite a wide variety of different perspectives taken by different degree programs. So what you might find is that some universities will offer kind of like a with analytics type program where they've taken their kind of like their business type program and maybe added a route on the side where you've got some more modules in sort of analytics. Whereas you also have approaches which what we've taken at my institution, where you've got what I call a from scratch business analytics program designed recently with the sort of AI revolution in mind. So the first thing I would say to students is just do sort of homework, dig into the program specifications to see exactly how each program has been designed. But I think just in general for business analytics programs within a business school environment, you can probably expect quite a hands-on and applied degree program where you're really trying to apply those quantitative machine learning type techniques, but with business, interesting business problems in mind, and less so those kind of more dry, like mathematical sort of proof and theorem type subjects. And again, you need to check with the specific course, but I would say that probably most modern business analytics courses would have quite like a project heavy focus, because obviously the aim is to try and get students to work with data and produce interesting outputs that can then be used by businesses to make change. So you probably find there's like a project heavy focus. And in terms of thinking about like some of the actual subject matter and some of the skills, I would say probably, the journey would usually start with the more foundational skills like, introduction to analytics, data visualization and storytelling. And obviously like the core sort of maths and stats methods and programming, but then build that towards the more sort of technical subjects in machine learning, AI and AI powered analytics, and then more niche subjects like natural language processing and deep learning, which sit at the frontier of like the generative AI type chatbot type things, which are really like scaling up businesses now. So I think all of those things are what students probably would expect from a program. Again, in terms of like assessments and what students sort of how students are examined, depending on the degree program, you might still get a few traditional assignments like exams and things in there. But I think increasingly you'll hopefully see more innovative type outputs, students being able to do things like dashboards, maybe even things like AI co-pilots as part of their projects. So I think hopefully as these things evolve, there's some quite cool things going on, cool projects that students can get involved with on these types of programs.
Love that. Wow. So really, yeah, really, I do lots of these videos with loads of different subjects, and some subjects just jump out as being like super interesting and stuff. So thank you so much for sharing. Right then, so let's imagine a student is like me. Now they've heard kind of the first two questions and two answers, and is now super interested. In terms of applications, if you've got a student that's interested in business analytics and studying that at uni, do you mind just giving us an idea of what might be really useful, what universities might look for, and just give us a little application snapshot?
Yeah, okay. So I think any kind of good degree program in business analytics would probably take students from scratch and take them up to the frontiers of the subject. At least you'd hope that would be the case. So it's not a case that you have to have been sort of programming since you were 5 years old or anything. I think just generally, to be able to demonstrate like a curiosity and willingness to learn are generally more sort of important than prior technical expertise, which you'll develop on the degree program. I guess it's probably important that students should at least try and demonstrate an interest in, problem solving, maybe some data analysis, maybe some, appreciation of how AI is changing the business landscape. Even just going down to like in your spare time, maybe if you're interested in something, something like sport, for example, just going and downloading a data set, trying to get some data, seeing what you can do with it, just open it up, play around with it, maybe make some graphs, see if you're interested in it, and then obviously take that forward if it interests you. You get a few students who come on who've tried things like trading or coding competitions and stuff like that. If you have done anything like that, that looks quite nice just to highlight in an application to show that you've done something outside of what you've learned at school or high school, and shown something which is relevant to the degree program. Or it might be just taking a data angle to a subject you've already learned at school, like economics or business. Maybe try and go and download some data on the economy and have a look at it or graph it, and see what it looks like. So I think anything like that which shows that students have dabbled with maybe something to do with data or to do with some kind of simple analytics outside of what they've done at school might look nice in an application. Rather than just being sort of, I like maths, therefore I'm going to study business analytics, maybe trying to do something a bit more specific, like, I've taken this data set, I found it really interesting, and I've tried to apply it to this.
Love that. Love all the kind of the hands-on examples, Jack. So in terms of, I'm going to pick your brains now on careers. Now, I've got a friend that completed a course related. I never actually asked him what the exact course name was, but he did a course very closely related to analytics, and he's doing fantastically well. So my only experience of someone that's done the course is a really positive one. And you touched earlier on about sport and some areas that perhaps some people watching this video might not have expected. But do you mind just talking a little bit about careers and what a student that completes a business analytics course might well go on to do in the future?
Yeah, okay. So I think this is one of those kind of how long is a piece of string type thing, because we touched upon this earlier. Pretty much every sector is using data now. People want to be able to use that data to make profitable or informed business decisions. So I think the range of careers is really quite enormous. In terms of the sector, we touched upon this earlier, but finance and fintech are probably the ones which lots of business school students want to go into. But there's obviously also like consulting and technology. We've mentioned healthcare and sports. I've recently set my students a challenge in like sports analytics to try and do something like Premier League scouting applications, where you take Premier League football players' data and try and come up with a scouting mechanism using data analytics. So you can imagine lots of jobs out there and those kind of things. Government organizations or charity organizations are obviously also needing people with data analytics skills. So it really is kind of quite a wide spectrum of places that you can imagine students going into. So from that perspective, it's quite hard for me to give an answer, but that's also great for students who come to study this kind of degree program, because I've chatted to students who want to go into healthcare, chatted to students who want to go into finance. So there's quite a wide spectrum. And in terms of like job descriptions, you can also imagine that being fairly wide open, or job roles. Some people might be a business analyst, but you might also be a data analyst, data scientist, risk analyst, financial analyst. So I think there are quite a lot of different roles. But I think one interesting shift is that analytics skills are not now just confined to like tech companies. It really is something that's applicable to all jobs in all sectors. And I think as traditional industries start to rapidly adopt AI technology, they're going to be needing people with these kind of skills coming out into the graduate market. So I think it's a good time to be jumping on the business analytics bandwagon.
Yeah, definitely. And you've also, Jack, like when you were talking, I was thinking, yes, yes, yes. And, it's such a wide area, but also like transferable skills. Like if you have those skills, like I use, analytics all the time, but I wish I had more knowledge in terms of the knowledge that you've got. And it's so, depending on whatever career you go into, they're skills that are just going to be
Yeah,
so useful in any job that you do.
yeah. That's it. When I speak to people sort of my kind of age who are now like more progressed in their career, they've had to almost learn those skills themselves in their spare time in terms of things like the AI and those kind of techniques. And whereas nowadays, students come into an undergraduate degree and just hit the ground running by learning all that stuff, straight from the go.
Yeah, and using their AI to the advantage rather than say, I still need someone to create the questions and the briefs and stuff that gets the really good answer out of it. Wow, that was love that. Exactly what we try and do with these events, like super in terms of content, quite a short video, but anyone watching this is going to know so much more about business analytics than they did right at the start. So final thing for me to do is just to say a really big thank you to Dr. Jack Foston, joining us from Bayes Business School, which is part of City St George's University London. Jack, thank you.
Thank you.